Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Soul. My name is Adam Smith. Today we're going to be unboxing Fallout Wasteland Warfare. This is a two-player starter set from Modiphius Entertainment and of course licensing from Bethesda. To make this thing a Fallout IP, of course, you need to have Bethesda involved, and the artwork, as you can see from the cover of the box, looks fantastic. It looks like Modiphius has done a great job of capturing the look, at least, of Fallout and paying homage to that line of products from Bethesda. So I'm very, very impressed by the front cover, at least. Now, I also want to make mention of the fact this box is already opened, so you're going to notice there's no wrap in it at all. So it's kind of a re-unboxing, and the reason for that is because I was a little too excited when I received this at Gen Con, and I unwrapped it almost right away and showed it to a number of people. I really wanted to get inside of this thing and see exactly what was inside, so this isn't going to be a normal unboxing where I'm actually tearing it open for the first time. I've already seen this the inside contents of this box, which is helpful because I can actually give you guys some information as we unbox it that's a little more useful than normal. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the outside of the box first, and then we're going to move inside. So, first off, you've got the wonderful artwork on the front. Looks fantastic. I have no issues with it at all. I'll give you guys a little bit of a close-up of the box itself. You can see the artwork is phenomenal. There might be a bit of a sheen there just because of the lighting, but you can see that, like, if you're looking to capture the Fallout universe, it's really nice. It presents itself really nice and will look really good on the shelf. So first off, if you flip this thing up, you'll notice it says here, Fallout Wasteland Warfare, 12 pre-assembled plastic miniatures and rules for wargaming in the Wasteland. Now, why is that important? Why have they bothered to put that there? Because there might be some confusion that this particular box has resin in it, because typically miniatures games, wargaming games, especially in today's age, are typically leaning towards resin, and they usually are even back in the day. So, with that being said, this particular two-player starter set is plastic. They're pre-assembled, so this is going to be more what most of us are familiar with in terms of board games. From a miniature standpoint or a wargaming standpoint, you can and will find everything, including this two-player set, in resin going forward. So this will be the only product that I'm aware of that will be created in plastic. They do that, again, likely for a barrier to entry and also for a cheaper production standpoint in order to get the game at your hands for a less dollar value. So if you're actually going to the Modiphius site and you pre-order the entire Wave 1, you not only get this box here, which is the plastic version, you'll also get the same box but in resin form. So you'll end up having two, which is great because you get double sets of dice, double sets of tokens, double sets of pretty much everything that's inside of it. So that's good for increasing your army, but it's also good from the standpoint of making sure that everything is resin going forward. So just want to make mention of that. When you start seeing these miniatures, they are plastic. So we already showed you this side of the box. There's this side of the box right here, and again has some different artwork. So no matter how you decide to present this on your wall, like in your shelf, it has a wonderful appearance to it that just screams Fallout no matter what you see. But you can see all four sides of that was totally different. I'm not going to flip the box over as I normally do, because if I do that, I'm likely going to tumble a whole bunch of stuff, making a big mess, and we'll do that later. So let's take the top off this thing and find out what's inside. So the first thing that you get when you take a look inside is you're going to see some baggies first off. So they do include a bunch of baggies so that you can punch out your tokens and organize them. So that's fantastic. And I always like that. You get some paper fold-out terrain mats. Now these look great for the actual fact that they are paper. They're going to be flat as a board, so they're really easy to transport. If you're looking to play this game like mobile, like you want to go to your mobile, I should say, you want to move towards your friend's house or move this to a different room. Again, having the paper's nice. My favorite is neoprene, of course, so don't worry if you're seeing this paper, not terrain, but terrain mat, I guess. If you're seeing this and thinking that that's the only option, it isn't. They have neoprene mats available as well. Of course, they cost extra, and they can't fit a neoprene mat inside the game box, or the weight would just go way up to the roof, and the length of the box just wouldn't fit it, the width of the box. But you get in this one, and actually, even with this one, you can see a 3x3 terrain, which I believe is what is created between these two paper-based mats. Have to be split in two in order for it to work. So essentially what you have here is a fold-out mat made of paper, but again, you can see the artwork on it is really nice. Now the only difference is you're going to have to probably set this out for a while until those lines are flat. So you might have to put something heavy on it overnight to get it down because of course they're folded. But if you're going the neoprene route anyway, like I am, these are just going to be nice to have in case I need to move it somewhere or have another copy of these, you know, play games on and stuff like that. But they are actually really nice. So what I want to show you is kind of the graphics on them themselves. So they actually do come out really nice. I'm sorry for any sheen that might be there, but you can see everything pops nicely, even though it's flat as a board because it's printed on a piece of paper. The depth of actually the items and the rocks and stuff like that give it a little bit of a 3D look. You can see there's even some items on this one here, but they're crystal clear. They look really, really good. And if I open this up any further, you start seeing like there's more. And of course, what I'll do likely is I'll probably show this on another, I'll unfold this separately and show you guys maybe a picture of it. But you can see the detail of like telephone poles being down. You've got a car that looks like it's been destroyed and is kind of sitting there. But the detail on them is not cheap. It looks good for a paper mat. Alright, so moving right along, the first thing you're going to see that's going to be exciting is this wonderful, wonderful quick reference guide to getting into Fallout. So the purpose of this is called Getting Acclimated, so your initial know-how for Wasteland Survival. This is going to be the first thing you want to take a look at and read when you open it up, because it's the quick guide. It only has about 7 to 8 pages, and when I say 7 to 8, I don't mean 78. It is thin, it's very easy to read, and it's going to get you, if you're not familiar with wargaming at all, this is going to be the one you want to check out. It's going to get you into finding your feet, how to actually play the game at the broadest, you know, level. So essentially the basic, so even the first sentence says these basic tutorials are for those who are new to tabletop and wargaming. So if you're not new, you might be able to jump past this whole book and go right to the rule book and go from there. This one's really cool because if you've never played a tabletop game or war game before, what's nice about this is not just a whole pile of rules on 7 pages, it's a section of rules that talk about finding your feet, your unit cards, how they work, quickly, really quickly at a high level, measuring, how to use those actual measurement or rulers, which will come in the game as actual punch-outs, movement, which is going to show you on your card here how much movement your character actually has and how to use it, and then right away it moves you into a scenario, a tutorial 1 scenario that says navigating the waste. So instantly you're going to be basically, you know, building a scenario like you can see here, and you can use the measurements to find out how big you should build that out. And again, you've got kind of your starting point, your exit point, and here's a crate with a pistol in it. And your goal is simply to just start learning how to activate and move around and become familiar with that. And then after you've done that quick tutorial mission, you flip to the next one, and you automatically start talking about the next set of interesting rules, which in this particular case, as you can see, is the fact that you are special. So it's going to talk about strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. And it's going to talk about how they all work. You're also it's going to talk about how the skill checks are done, what they're referencing based on what you use. So in this case, you know, if you're using an assault rifle, which is this right here, you're referencing the number beside it, things like that. You come over here, it tells you how the icons work. So we got ranged weapons, you've got melee weapons, you've got heavy weapons, and then bam, you're moving into a tutorial for a shooting range, which is going to get your miniature on the map over here with a number of different targets, and you're going to start actually rolling dice shooting at it. So you're getting used to the shooting mechanics now. So you're going to go on and on through these 7 pages until you've done a total of 4 different tutorials that take you through a bunch of different things, getting you used to how to use skill checks, moving, attacking, all that good stuff, the basics. Once you're done, you'll finally do the tutorial called Solving the Rat Problem, and at this point it gives you a little bit of an objective, a little bit of guys to shoot, it sends you on your way. Once you've completed this, you have a basic understanding of the game. That's what the purpose of this particular book is, and I love it because there's not going to be, like, not everyone, especially those that are not even part of the hobby, or this is the first game they're ever going to play that's even remotely close to a war game, tabletop game, board game, that type of thing. This is really nice because it just eases them in without dumping a 70-page rulebook on them and telling them to learn every little bit. So this is fantastic and just shows that they went the extra mile to knock down the barrier of entry for people that are not familiar with war games and tabletop games. So moving on here, we've got a punch board. So you can see way up here we've got a bunch of actual rulers. So there's a orange is the smallest, then yellow, then red, then green, then blue, and there's a black one that goes right along the middle here. We've got a bunch of tokens, so you've got letters going along the bottom here. These, again, these tokens are actually they're kind of like items, basically. And I forget exactly the term they use, but essentially this is what you'll be looking at when you're walking through the wasteland, and you'll be flipping them over, so you might find objectives with these. The blank ones, you found nothing. If you land these particular ones, it just means that you found something, and you might be able to obtain it, but it has a fail condition or a nasty condition where it kind of forces you to resolve it, and it can actually trip. It's kind of like, I think the idea behind it, if I'm not mistaken, is to have it be more like a booby trap. It's almost like you found yourself a crate, you flip it over, oop, there could be an item in here, but there's a chance you could actually hurt yourself, it could explode. Whereas these other ones are like, oop, you found items, which are what the wrenches, I believe, are for. And these other ones are like, oh, you found an objective or an item, but there's all these conditions you have to meet. Like, you have to do certain things in order to do it, which is like maybe use your computer skill, your hacking skills, in order to break into specific computers. Very much like Fallout, the video game. So again, they're always tying that stuff in so that you really do feel like you're playing Fallout. You've got tokens here that represent armor boosts, so these are all +1s. You've got C's, which I think are for caps, and they also could be for counters. I could be mistaken, it could be both or one of those. You've got luck tokens, which apparently you can get if I forget the condition is that you get the luck tokens, but that's what those are. More armor boost tokens. You've got these ones here, and I'm going to give this a little bit closer view to the camera. And what I'll do is I'll bring this up so you guys can see now what I've been talking about. So there's the caps. Of course, if you really want the really cool bottle caps, which I think these they're replacing these, you can actually go to Modiphius' site and buy a literal pack of bottle caps that are just like legitimate bottle caps with the painting on them. So they're Nuka-Cola caps, essentially, and you can use those for currency, and it's just fantastic. It looks so good. It feels good. It sounds good. They're clunky. They have that nice feel to them. And then, of course, you've got other ones here. These ones are like you actually gain a die. So yellow dice, if this is sitting next to your miniature, it means you're going to gain a yellow die in your next roll. Stuff like this are obviously modifiers to your skill dice roll, from what I understand. You've got yourself 1 to 10 marked out here. Not sure exactly what those are for, or these. Ammunition, fire, so explosions, if you're on fire, that type of thing. Stun, so basically characters that are stunned. Frost would be frost or cold. And then you've got some numbered ones here. So again, some of these I don't know exactly what they are yet. I haven't played it, but I cannot wait. Here's the next set of cardboard punch-outs. Again, you get a second set of the rulers so that you can go ahead and start playing. Again, you can get acrylic ones if you want. All these black kind of explosion symbols are all damage. So when you're actually tracking your damage in your characters, 1 damage, 2 damage, all that kind of stuff, you get a whole bunch. Again, with these dice, if you choose to, I think how this works is if you choose to charge and you go move your miniature from your base to, and you move to, and you're kind of adjacent to the other miniature and you've charged, you gain the ability to choose whether you want to have a green die in your next roll or a black die. And of course that can be different in terms of what benefits you can get, because each die focuses on a little bit, the odds are kind of heavily stacked in one area or the other. I'll explain more about that later. Another ruler's in the middle. Exclamation marks are kind of like your, I think they correlate to like VATs, or they either correlate to just kind of like a critical hit. So they're basically what will tie into the item cards and give boosts. So these are going to be used as kind of counters. The more of them you get, the closer you are to unlocking a really powerful effect with your weapon or your character. You've got these armored follow boys up here. I'm not sure exactly what they're for. And you've got a whole bunch more different type of objective tokens, this time with numbers, some blanks, some items, and some objective markers, and then a couple of these, which I'm not sure what that green is. That's pretty much it for the punch boards. Now you're going to come into this area. Now typically there will be some cards here. I've taken them out of the box. We'll talk about them in a second, but the first miniature you're probably seeing and wondering about is the Deathclaw. That's right, this massive Deathclaw right here is in green. Again, remember this is plastic, pre-assembled, and I do apologize for the shine of the light, because the light itself may be making this look a little bit more glossy than it actually is, but and it kind of takes away from the detail a little bit, but I can tell you when it's here in front of me, it's really, really nice. It's actually very dark. It just looks very, very glossy on camera for some reason. But the Deathclaw is the biggest one you can get in this particular starter pack. There's bigger than this. But the other thing you'll notice is the base. You notice that the base actually has some items on it and has some depth and things like a rubber tire and stuff. So when you're painting this, you actually can go ahead and have terrain built into your bases, which means you don't have to deal with that trying to make your bases look good, which I love, because a lot of miniature games forget that, and they make flat, typical bases, and then, of course, you have to go the extra mile to really enhance them, make the bases blend into the terrain. Next up, you're going to see some dice. So I'm going to quickly go over these dice. basically you have a skill die. This skill die is the one you roll when you're making checks in the game, usually for attacking and for a number of different things against all the different special stats you have. If you get a gear, I believe it's a success. An exclamation mark is a success. An X is an outright fail, and the rest are just, I think, numbered all the way up to maybe 9, I think is the highest. I have to double check that again. I think it's 9. So this is the major one that you roll when you're doing a check, and then you go through the dice themselves. So you're going to have, you can see here, you get 2 of every single dice. These ones here, black, yellow, blue, and green, are called effect dice. This is an armor save die, so you roll these for your armor in order to try to hopefully block hits with armor, so that one's pretty much easy to resolve. These 2 are going to be your extra black dice if you want to go after hits. As you can see, the odds of getting hits, which are these symbols right here, are much higher on these dice than any other die. They also, though, have symbols from other dice. So you'll notice this black one here has the Nuka bottle cap, or Nuka bottle, I should say. This blue one also has that. That's because it's the Nuka bottle is actually more common to get on the blue dice, but it's possible to get even modifiers, like this modifier -1 is more common on this green die. So you can see there's a little bit of everything in every die, but then each die specifically has a better chance of hitting specific things based on whatever it's used for. So this is for damage. If you want extra damage, black dice are your friend. If you want to go after armor piercing, then yellow is your friend. But it's still, like I mentioned before, it has other things involving the skill check, involving the bottle cast, but that's an armor piercing. It looks like an armor plate that's been basically ripped in half, and you can even get doubles of them. So this is a really cool one for busting through armor. The blue one is all about specials. It's all about basically opening up abilities on your cards, your gun shooting maybe further, having more power behind it, having a special critical shot, that type of thing, or just saving up for one of those nasty shots. So these are really fun, but they may not relate to an actual damage right out the gates, but they still have damage on them. I think there's even, let's see here, is there a damage mark on this one? Ooh, there's not. There's no damage on the blue one, but it's all special effects essentially. Then the green one, it has damage, but its main focal point is actually making the skill dice roll easier to obtain. So if your skill, for a particular character is a 7, your strength is 7, and you need to hit that in order to do a melee attack. So you need to get a 7 or lower. If you're rolling a green die with it, it's got a chance to basically reduce the number that's on this die. So if you happen to roll a 9 and you roll -2 and your strength is a 7, then boom. So that's a good thing. Sometimes that's really helpful, especially to help with those bad skill die rolls where you end up getting a really high number. So that's essentially an overview of the dice at the highest level. Of course, there's more to it than that, but that's the general idea. I haven't explained every single side, but that gives you an idea as to how they're broken down. The next book here is the Campaign Handbook. This is a really cool book. It's called Secure Your Place in the Wasteland Society. This is all about solo AI campaigning settlement. You can do this even with other people as well. So it's not just solo, but this is where you find the juicy stuff that I'm really interested in. So right off the get-go, you're going to see here the book opens up. It's a thick book. It's stapled, I believe. Yes, stapled, and it has about 49 pages. So it runs about 50 if you include the back page, which has a full breakdown of the card and kind of all the different things in there. So the first thing you're going to run to when you go into this book is you're going to find the table of contents, of course. There's some Wasteland faction talk here. So you've got Survivors, Super Mutants, and the Brotherhood of Steel are the major 3. Right here you've got the contents, or table of contents. So this one here talks right there. Against the Wasteland has solo co-op mode talk. Activating AI models, responses, rules for AI play. This is the section I really like. Then it moves into settling down. This is the coolest part of the game that is outside of what you'd expect. So typically a miniatures game, you have a scenario, you have a one-off scenario, you fight it, you're done. What the settlement aims to do is kind of bridge those scenarios together so that you're actually building, just like you would in the video game, a settlement and actually enhancing it in order to make your unit stronger and better, and things like that. So there's actually, and I don't want to compare this in any way, shape, or form to Kingdom Death, but that's the vibe I get, is essentially you've got a settlement phase that you're able to do a little bit of stuff in between to really tie things together, and it keeps you coming back for more as you try to increase your settlement, what's in it, what you've built, that type of thing. So that's really, really cool, and it helps to I think get you more vested into the game than just running into and playing one particular scenario. But also note that there are linked campaign scenarios inside of this game as well, where you can start at one particular story and run through about 5 missions that actually all tie together even regardless of the settlement phase, which is really cool that happens in between. So then you've got scenarios here. So these are going to be a bunch of scenarios that are all that you can actually go ahead and do. Tutorial scenarios. So basically, as soon as you're done that one we went through earlier, the little 7-pager, then you'd probably want to move to tutorial scenarios to help you kind of get used to the first introductory scenarios in the Wasteland, and then from there it's up to you. You can go the AI route, you can go the link campaign route, you can do whatever you want at that point. The Modiphius is also going to be releasing more and more content for campaign stuff, so we might see more rules. We might see, not more rules, but we might be seeing more structured scenarios being dropped that we can kind of plug and play into our campaign, so that's awesome to know they're going to support it that way. The first page here is introduction. You've got Into the Wasteland. Of course, the actual artwork matches exactly what you'd expect. And then it moves into things like events. So it's going to talk about the event cards, which we'll see later on. Guns for hire, perks, boosts. It's got sections for everything. Quests. The quests are really cool. So that's what these black border cards are. They're quests that can happen. Against the Wasteland is section 3. So this is where it gets into, look at that, solo and co-op modes. So this is where it's talking about how do you set it up, how do the rounds work, how do the objectives and subjects work. When you're talking about X as the subject, you know, there's different things that the AI can do. So you can see there's breakdowns on the page for all of this stuff. It's really, really cool, and I love the fact that this is built right into the game, even at the very beginning. It's already talking about how you're activating AI models. The cool thing is, too, is you can technically play this 1 versus 1 and then add in AI on top of it in order to even add to your experience and have kind of a swingy player in there that's going to do something different every time. The actual AI cards themselves have all these little letters on them, and basically depending on how much health they have, they're going to act in certain ways and follow certain things based on what they roll. So that's a cool way of handling their personality. Basically, their personality is going to change depending on how weak they are or strong they are. They're also going to have responses that are based in either attack, move, objective, fallback, or defend. That's what those letters are broken down by, which are kind of all over those cards there. So again, this is going to go through all of that and explain everything, which I'm going to do for you guys in a separate rules video because this is going to take too much time to go through that detail, but it's really cool. Then you get into section 4, which talks about building your settlement, you know, how you're going to build it. You build it, you draw it, you select things, you can upgrade your player force, you can start going ahead and actually building up your settlement in terms of what you can buy, like here, structures. Here's your structure name, all the different costs associated with actually upgrading a particular structure, crafting something that might give you a boost or a bonus. Like there's all kinds of stuff. It's crafting structures, infrastructure, item structures. You come down here, you've got exploration structures, you've got other structures you can build and boost. Like craziness. And I'm sure this is going to get added to even more so as it goes along. Scenarios, this is where it gets into the scenarios, of course. So you're going to have pre-built scenarios that you can play, standalone ones. So these are going to be one-offs that you can play, or you can play them, you know, back to back to back. So there's 5 different ones. They're going to give you a generic understanding of where everything that's important in terms of balance should be placed. Then it's up to you to kind of add cover and everything else you want to add in there terrain-wise if you want to make it even fancier. Then once you've done those 5, there's things called linked scenarios. So these linked scenarios are very much a progression of a story. So you'll start with Defend the Farm here, and then move along to New Shroud, and then Hurt Locker, and then you're going to move to Reinforcements Have Arrived, and then Hold the Fort. So once you've done that whole thing, you've basically done a full linked campaign, which is cool. Then you get into the AI scenarios. These are specifically tailored, play tested, and made for solo players that want to play against the AI. So here you go, you've got a bunch of things that are already pre-created. Of course you can make your own because the AI cards will control the enemies, and you can actually create your own scenarios if you'd like. But it's really cool that they actually included those in the actual game itself for you. Tutorial scenarios, this is probably where you'll end up going after, like I said, you finish the scenarios from the easier manual that you saw, the getting acclimated with the Wasteland book. Once you do those ones, you'll move to these, which are kind of like starting to give you objectives and focal points, but at a smaller scale. So, and then of course they just scale up. And I think these tutorial scenarios can also be played in the solo capacity as well. So even though it's not listed as being soloable, you can make it soloable, and they work. So there's a whole bunch of tutorial scenario outcomes for the survivors, super mutants, all that good stuff. At the end of the day, this is one of the most exciting books in the entire box because of what it adds in there for solo and cooperative play. So this is what I'm really excited about. The next book that you're going to see is going to be the rules book. So this one is not worth going into too much detail except for the fact that this thing is 57 pages, and 58 if you include the back, which has a nice quick reference on some of the symbols that you're going to be referencing throughout the game. The actual book itself has fantastic art on the front that matches the cover of the box. Here is the table of contents in terms of what's inside. So you've got the introduction, leaving the vault, and then it starts breaking everything into details. So this is where it's like, how do you determine line of sight? How do you determine elevation? Even at the very beginning, it says, how do you assemble your miniatures? So again, these are plastic, so you're going to skip this step because this is about resin. But if you purchase more of their products, they're all in resin, including another resin version of this starter set. This is what you would use to actually, if you've never done it before, how do you actually wash them? Remove their components, removing the mold lines, prepare the glue surface, apply the glue, put them together, painting them. You know, you never painted before, so what should you start with? What color should you buy? This has literally army painter standard paints here, so you can actually sit there and go, I need the dark tone for this particular wash, I need the strong tone, I need these particular colors for highlights. It's awesome. So that you know exactly what you need, and I imagine they'll be following suit with that throughout the entire line. Gets into fully equipped, which talks about the mini cards, which we'll talk about soon enough, and then boom, you're out the door and into learning about everything, including how to actually read the rulers for different ranges. Are you colorblind? How do you actually know, you know, if you are colorblind, there's actual ways to know which ruler you should be using. They've thought of everything, and they've put a lot of detail into this book. It's fantastic, and I have actually read it through once already. So this is a beefy book. Of course, this is going to be a little bit much to read through the first time. So if you just want to kind of get into things from the get-go and get playing, this is the one you want to read. That'll get you started and get you playing and enjoying the game right out of the gates. But that'll give you the meat of the game right there, rules-wise. Then we come into the box. So you'll notice here there's some cards missing. Well, I've taken out all of the mini cards, which sit right here, because I just wanted to have easy access to them, and also the standard cards. So I've got them off to the side here. We're going to talk about the miniatures really quick. So first off, the alien. So we're going to go through the cards as they are here. So we've got an alien card. So you can see here the stats for the alien. If I can make that focus for you guys. There you go. So there's the stats. And this is the alien himself. And there might be just a little bit of glare there. So again, the green is a little tough to get it to show. I can tell you right now, in person it looks fantastic, but on camera for some reason the white lights on the green, they don't line up so hot. But they're perfectly fine in person. You've got the sole survivor here, so this is going to be your main character. Anytime you see that Fallout face up there, it means it's a unique survivor that can't be duplicated in the Wasteland. So sole survivor right here. So this is going to be like your major survivor. She's pretty awesome. She's also got a rifle in the back of her. Great detail for painting. Again, terrain there that's already built into the base. And the rifle that's sitting on the back is perfectly straight. Like there's no issues there, so that's great. Moving on to the next one, we've got this Soul Survivor Day 1. So there are opportunities for the same miniature to have multiple iterations of a card that have different stats, so you can use them different ways. That's cool. Of course, that's another reason why buying another base box, another set of stuff is good, because you know there are such things as multiple dog mates, I think, even in this game and stuff like that. So it's cool to have that. The Settler, here's an example of one of the Settlers, a generic one. This is him right here, I think. Yeah, that looks right. And again, these gray ones always pop out just a little bit better with the camera and the lighting than the green ones do. But I can't wait. If I had the time to paint these things, I'd already started. The Enslaved Tech. So there's the card for the Enslaved Tech. Enslaved Tech, I think, is this guy right here. So he's got some cool terrain stuff popping out there. You can see it's kind of above. So that's awesome. Next one is dog meat. So here's dog meat, and dog meat's right here. So there's dog meat, one of our favorite companions. Okay, and then we've got the Mutant Hound. So the Mutant Hound is going to be a nasty foe. There's two of them actually in this box, so I'll just show you the one, but I think both sculpts are different. So there's one of them. Again, I really like, because these are the plastic pre-assembled version, it's nice from the standpoint that I can just start playing this out of the box. But the green is a little bit wild on camera, so I do apologize for that. But I can tell you in real life, when I'm looking at it, it's much darker than it appears on camera. The Super Mutant, this is going to be... Okay, so here's a regular Super Mutant here with a rifle. So that's going to be this guy right here. He's pretty beefy. So these guys are actually fairly large size miniatures, and there's actually rules for how these guys react based on cover and everything else, depending on their size, the base size. You've got the Brute, who's obviously swinging a gigantic hammer. So that's going to be this guy right here. He's actually pretty cool. We're all familiar with being having that swung at us in the video game, so that's pretty awesome. We've got the Aviator. Now, the Aviator is cool for two reasons. I actually have the resin version of this one. So inside the box, of course, it's plastic, but I actually have a resin copy of that miniature as well. So I can show you the differences between the two. So this one, for whatever reason, you can see here, shows up really nice on camera details-wise. I don't know why that is better than any of the other ones. Maybe because it's a smaller miniature. It's not as bulky as the other ones. But here is the resin version of that exact same miniature, and you can see the difference is crazy. So just so you guys are aware, this is the standard. Nor all of the range of this entire Fallout Wasteland Warfare line is going to be in resin. So again, having the plastic version is cool and all, but at the end of the day, if you're really getting into this, in the long run, you're going to be getting resin, and resin is just going to pop that much better than anything else. In terms of quality, in terms of the mold lines and everything, it's fantastic. Now, the other thing to note with putting together these resin ones, you might think, putting together a miniature has got to be tough. This resin one, for example, that I put together, literally came with the base, this body, and this one arm separate. So there was 3 pieces for this one miniature. All I had to do was basically take the feet, slide them in. They already had the holes. They already had the holes in the base. Slide the feet into the holes. Use some super glue too, of course. And then a little bit of super glue for this arm, and that was it. It literally took me a couple minutes to get this guy assembled. I had to hold his arm for maybe 30 seconds to make sure it wouldn't fall off, and that was about it. He was all assembled, no issues at all. So it's not like a Kingdom Death Monster situation where every little piece, like you're putting his head on, you're putting his arm on, you're putting his shoulder blades on. Like it's scaled down. You're still assembling, but it's not to the same insane level. Deathclaw, of course, has a card. We've already seen the Deathclaw, so we'll move past that. We've got the Godard here, so I'll show you him. He's pretty cool, actually. He's got a lot of... He looks really interesting, so... Look at the detail on the armor itself, if that's showing up for you guys. Looks fantastic. It's just so cool. So that's one that would be a lot of fun to paint. And then we've got this guy here. I think this is another settler, I think. I'm not 100% sure. So this guy here looks like just another settler. So I think there's 2 variations of the settlers, just that you have differences, if I'm not mistaken. Then you're going to have a bunch of cards here that are going to be, like we were talking about before, these are the AI cards that actually relate back to a particular miniature. So each miniature has its own. They all have a different personality or ways that they're going to function, and these letters obviously correlate to something we talked about earlier, and it's all based on their health. Depending on where they're at in their health, in whatever you roll, that's how they're going to act. So again, they've created an AI system that's good because it keeps it so that, you know, typically super mutants are going to want to get up close and personal and beat you up. But if they have a ranged weapon, so they happen to be like the Aviator version, maybe from long range and for their full health, they'll sit back and they'll kind of just take pot shots at you. But if you really beat them down to 1 or 3, they're just going to come running at you. So they've made it in a way that the AI makes sense for what everyone's familiar with from the video games as well. So there's actual characteristics, personality, and also whatever they feel is a threat. If they are almost ready to die, they're going to act differently than if they're at full health. And that's smart. That's a smart way to design an AI system for a war game. It's been done before as well, but this one looks like it's done very well as well. So that's pretty much it. There's a couple reference cards that are in the standard size as well. So AI responses attack, AI responses objective and defend. And then the opposite sides of these, you've got AI responses for move and fallback, and AI responses for target priority. So a whole bunch to read there. Alright, so now we're going to move into the cards. So the deck of cards right here. So this is going to be interesting because there's a whole bunch of really cool and unique cards that are made specifically for this game, and they all have really iconic pictures from the video game itself, so you'll be able to notice a lot of this stuff. So Heroic is one type of card, for instance. You've got Perks, which everyone's familiar with from the video games. You've got events that can pop up in the Wasteland. You have boosts, which can appear and help you out, or things that you can basically gain through certain structures in your settlement that allow you to get those boosts. Leader cards for the leaders. Explorer cards for exploring. You got danger cards. You have, I think you have animals or creatures, that's what it was. Creature cards. And then you have item cards. So there's tons of items in this starter set, a whole bunch of them. And again, that's going to give a whole bunch of different things that you can potentially find. And then last but not least, you have quests. So these are going to be things that potentially pop up during your adventures through the game. And of course, these are kind of spoilerish because they have like a front and back. So I'm not going to show everything, but there's a decent number of these quests that basically are going to pertain to different things. They're going to branch off in different ways. And of course, the more content you buy through other packs that they have through Wave 1 and onwards, this deck and all of these decks are going to increase, of course, in size. So, to start it off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the opposite side of this deck so you can actually get a feel for what's going on here. So the first ones I want to take a look at are part of the item deck, and this is called the, these are basically drugs and alcohol, because within Fallout Universe, we all know that you can use drugs and alcohol basically to gain particular bonuses. So you have the alcohol symbol there, drug symbol there, and of course they'll give you some bonuses. You might be wondering, why are there different columns, why are there different stats in different areas, why are these little pips right here, and what are these symbols down here? Well, let me explain it to you really quickly without going into too much detail, but let's say hypothetically here, in a weird situation, our alien was wanting to enjoy a bourbon. So if this was the case, then this card, if I'm understanding it correctly, and I'd have to double check in the rules to be 100% sure, but I believe it would sit like this, and basically mean that I would gain on the very first activation of my alien after consuming it, nothing as a bonus. But then on the next activation or use of this individual, it would tick to the next row, and you could see my endurance would actually go up. And then finally, on the last one, my strength would go up and my intelligence would actually go down. And so that kind of just makes thematic sense with drinking. Your intelligence is going to go a little bit sloppy there. The interesting thing with these cards is that most of them you'll consume until they're gone, and then it's just kind of discarded. However, if the particular consumable card, which is like a drug or alcohol or other different types of things you can essentially use on your individuals, you can use like mentins. These are all drugs actually. Let me see. This one's armor. So armor is a good example of one that could be used, and it's just used for its stats until it's broken or the armor breaks itself. But with this one, what ends up happening is there's this little symbol down here. Happens with all the alcohol and drug-related ones. There's an icon here, which is brutally hard to get to focus here. But you can see there's kind of a picture of the Fallout Boy, and he doesn't look too well. He looks a little sick. So basically, if that symbol shows up, whatever symbol's beside it, you're going to go ahead and you're going to roll a blue die once you've gone through all 3 of the pips. So you start here, like I said, and then move again, and move again, until all the actions are gone. And then what's going to happen is you're going to roll a blue die. And if it happens to land, like I just did on the explosion, then yeah, this is going to trigger. And what that means is this card is going to literally flip upside down, and it's going to sit like so, meaning that my agility now has permanently taken a thwack. Now, you can go ahead and try to heal this a number of different ways. The rules gets into that to try to get rid of this disability basically that you now have. But I mean, as you know from individuals that have been drunk in the past, or you yourself if you have, your basically your agility is not so great. So basically it's going to have a negative effect against you, and that's the risk with these things. There are positives, but and there are even negatives that show up within the typical flow of using this particular thing until it counts down, and it counts down starting with 3, 2, 1 if I'm not mistaken. But then there's that risk that at the very end when you've done all 3, if you have that symbol right here of the Fallout Boy looking sick, and you roll the blue die and it lands the emblem beside it, bad news. Now this blue die has 2 sides that have that explosion on it, as you can see right there. So there's like a 2 in 12 chance basically of landing it. So basically that's a it's not a 50-50. What am I talking about? But it's in more increased odds than just a 1 in 12 odds. So not bad there. But if you're talking about other types of drugs, for instance, like this one here has a star, well, if you take a look at that die, there's only 1 star on it. Oh, I'm a liar. There's 2. So I guess it's the exact same for stars. But that's the thing. Each one of these, the ones in the starter set at least, introduce these. So stars seem to be common. The explosion's common. Everything else is no longer there. But like the more stuff that they add into the game going forward, they may pick different sides of this die and use that in order to increase or decrease the odds that you're going to become addicted to something. So that's kind of cool. Thought I'd mention it. So that covers that. Moving on, we've got the item deck. The item deck is quite large, as I was mentioned before. So it's basically the easy way to talk about this is you're going to have a title at the top of the item card that you have, and then you're going to see basically what type of weapon it is. So in this case, this is a grenade. You can have ones that are, you know, ranged weapons like a hunting rifle, or maybe something that's more like an actual melee type weapon or a claw. So it defines the type of weapon, and then it also defines its distance, a way that you can use it. So you can throw it a range white. So basically within range white, that ruler I'm allowed to use. And then whichever range you choose to use, whether it's this one or this one, in this case there's nothing here, you can't go to the second range level. Whatever dice are underneath of it are what you get. So if I was using the frag grenade, I'd be adding a black and yellow in. And then there's a whole section here I'm not going to get into specifics on until later, but it just gives you a whole bunch of other icons and things that, that really tie into the frag grenade and how it's used. And you can see that this changes depending on what you're using. If you use the Death Claw Crush, you've got some texture you've got to go through. You've also got different effects. This is a typical physical damage amount, so that's how much physical damage the Death Claw will do, is 3 off the hop, which is pretty nasty. Hunting Rifle does too. So this is an example here where there's 2 different ranges, short range, long range. Short range you get 2 yellow dice, long range 2 green dice. So that's kind of the idea behind it. Over here is a critical, so basically when you're rolling your skill dice, which is the white one, if you happen to roll a number of these exclamation marks, and you get a whole bunch of them, then basically you're counting up, or you're basically starting to accrue a number of them until you hit 3, and then once you do, on the long only one, you get to power up your long range shot to a 4 damage hit. So that's pretty nasty. So again, there's a ton of these cards in the game. Dog bites, claws, rifles, sledgehammers, shotguns, pipe rifles. So everything you'd expect from Fallout is here. They all have different... this is really what's going to change the gameplay up. And of course you got generic stuff, like you found a desk fan. It's just going to give you straight caps. The caps are usable when you're talking about settlement mode. Aviator caps, or Aviator caps, my apologies. Stuff like this can be armor, so it's going to give you resistance to physical attacks, or potentially, I forget which one that one is. It might be energy, I don't remember exactly, and there's one for radiation too. You also got stuff here for damage, but again, I have to learn all this stuff and figure it all out, but there's a whole bunch there. Those are all item cards. What else is in the deck? So we got heroic cards. So there's not as many heroic cards. There's about 4. And they all have different stats, or maybe they're the same. Okay, so whoever's got a hero, I guess, gets this card off the get-go. This might be the Sole Survivors card. I'm not 100% sure. I'll find out soon enough. Perks are perks. There's not all of them that are in the video game are here, so obviously they're going to flush them out with further content as they go, but they've got like Nerd Rage, Gun Nut for the rifle. So some of these are going to be familiar from the video game. Gun Nut Pistol, Blacksmith, Armorer, Local Leader, Mysterious Stranger. So some of these are just bang on to what you'd expect from the perks in the game. Next up, you've got events. So events are basically, you can think of it as Mother Nature. Basically, they're going to affect everybody on the game board. So you're going to have like a neutral... Oh, sorry, events are not that. My apologies. I'm thinking of something different, I think. Yes, sorry. Events are totally different. Events are events that can just occur. So an event can just randomly happen. So these are things that you could just pop out. Oh, no, I was right. My apologies. They can also be Mother Nature as well. So lightning storms, dust clouds, downpour. So basically the idea behind events, and I was correct the first time, but basically the idea is that everyone's affected by whatever effect comes out. So it could be, a radio thing that gets through, some gunfire, stuff like this, but everyone's affected by it, and there's an effect that you have to take into consideration with that one. You got boost. Boost comes primarily, if I understand correctly, from either scenario specific. You might start with something if you're a particular faction, or maybe your settlement allows you to boost your characters off the hop. So that's where these boost cards would come in. They give you a number of different things. They might give you an extra die. They might give you who knows what. There's all kinds of stuff here. So a whole handful of these. It looks like there's probably about 15. My guess is there's probably about 15 to 20 here. So that's not a bad set of cards there, and of course that's going to also increase as time goes on. Then we got leader cards. So if you're a leader, what type of leader are you? Are you a hunter, a brawler, wasteland searcher, or a warden? So there's a number of those, and of course those will probably get more and more broad as you complete more and more of the set. You've got explorer cards. So these cards look like this on the back. And basically, you've got like, recent campfire, what's that dog meets, recent tracks. These are things that basically stuff you're going to find or run into in the wasteland. So they might be triggered by events of a scenario, stuff like that. And then you've got these red-backed ones, which are a mix of danger as well as creatures. So creatures can appear, dangers can appear if bad things happen. Danger can trigger for a number of reasons. These are different things that can happen. You get shocked, things can blow up, you can have leaks, you can have creatures appear to nowhere. rogue bots. You can have radiation affect you, that type of thing. Again, likely to be filled out with more content in the future as you buy more and more packs. And you've got creature cards here, which you can run into that are going to be like merchants or medics or farmers and stuff like that. Things that can potentially just happen. Radroach nests, wonderful things like that. So again, decent amount of cards this way going into the base game. There's quite a bit there. So what will be interesting is as I go ahead and unbox in the future all of the additional content that I have coming to me, it'll be interesting to see how much that changes the stack of cards and how much more variation goes into all of this stuff. But saying that, that is literally everything in this box. At this point, we've covered the rules, we've covered the miniatures, the dice, the small cards, large standard cards. We've also covered the resin miniatures. We've also talked about the plastic miniatures. We've talked about the difference between getting a 2-player set in either plastic like this or possibly getting it in resin. We also know that the whole line going forward is going to be in resin, and we think we've covered pretty much everything there is to cover with this unboxing. So hopefully, guys, this was useful for you. I want to let you guys know if you're interested, there is a Fallout Wasteland Warfare demo that I have on my channel that I filmed during Gen Con, so if you want to check that out, it's already up. This is going to go into the Fallout Wasteland Warfare showcase, which the next video following up after this is going to be the solo setup or rules, or they might be 2 separate videos, we'll see. But I'm also likely to wait until the rest of the content arrives, because I'd like to try to bring in some of the terrain sets and some of the really cool stuff to add into the playthrough to make it even more exciting. So there might be a little bit of a delay there before I go ahead and do the playthrough, but I thought I would just show you guys what's inside the box so you can get excited about it and know that this stuff is actually currently in shipping for everyone that already pre-ordered. It's also heading to retail stores too. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.